Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great privilege to present, potentially as the last time as president of Serra International, the chairman for this meeting, Mr. Kurt Medico.
Music to my order. Escort that man out. Okay, so don't see a gavel, but bring this delegates meeting, the 81st Serra International delegates meeting to order. And I want to welcome you all for being here and taking the responsibility of being a delegate. I know several of you have multiple, you're so respected, you have multiple votes. So, and then they should all be on your little deal. So when we vote, you'll hold your deal up. And if there's a close one, if it's close, we'll go down and count them all. I've been in a few of those meetings. Hopefully today there's nothing that's that close. So the first item of business is the report of the Credentials Committee. And we have, Bob Goldsmith is here. Thank you, Bob. Long time.
Thank you, Mr. President. Always good to see you. This is the annual report of the Credentials Committee. We are happy. We met at 3 o'clock yesterday. The committee was duly appointed by the President. Consisted, besides myself, we had Dan Jones and Tim O'Neill were the members. We reviewed all those applications for delegate surveys that were turned in and completed successfully, as we said. The committee recommends and finds that we do have 53 actual delegates, and these people have a total of 106 votes. So that is the report. Very simple, correct. Thank you.
All right, the question is on the adoption of the Credentials Committee's report is presented. Are you ready for the question? Those in favor of the motion, please raise your voting card. Opposed? Motion passes. Close. Okay. So the next matter of business is the proposed rules of order and procedure, and they may be found on page 3 of your delegates book. And the chair will entertain a motion to adopt the rules as printed. We have a motion.
Motion by Al Beltran.
And a second.
Second by Dave Jones.
Okay. So those in favor of the motion, please raise your voting card. Those opposed, raise your voting card. Okay, that passes unanimously also. So the next business is approval of the minutes. The minutes of the 2023 convention are printed on page 5-7 of your delegates book. Are there any corrections to the minutes?
There's a typo on the list of officers from last year that were approved. It says 24-25. I believe it should be 23-24.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other corrections? So I have one myself. I'm waiting to see if anybody caught it. So it's not the book shows the date is 2024, and it was last year was 2023. So we'll add that correction from the chair. So are there any other corrections? So do I have a motion to approve the minutes as corrected from Gino, second by Candace? All in favor, raise your cards. All opposed, raise your cards. Motion Motion passes. Okay. So the next order of business is the Executive Director's report, so I call on John Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd once again like to thank everyone who was involved in making this convention as successful as it has been. In particular, Joe DeSherry, who's done a phenomenal job. He's been congratulated a lot, but one thing that hasn't been said is we were originally supposed to be here back in 2020, and then something happened, I forgot what it was, but we weren't able to be here. So Joe has effectively planned this convention twice, and maybe because he had that opportunity to get a do-over, that's why it's gone so well. I'd like to recognize Joe, the International Convention Committee, and the Serra of New Orleans one more time. Thank you. As we've heard, this year has been a remarkably successful and very busy year for Serra International. We attended 3 major events in the life of the church as an international organization. We were a major contributor and supporter of the National Eucharistic Congress, and local Serra clubs have done hundreds, if not thousands, of activities that have helped to promote a culture of vocations. But as I was thinking, what do I say here today? There was a heaviness that I couldn't shake. And I prayed about it, and I thought about it, and the heaviness remained, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then I realized it was concrete. And it might be because Greg's going off the board. But Greg was in the concrete business for a long time. So, but the real reason is I realized that I think that was placed on my heart because civilization forgot how to make concrete for about 1,000 years. That was lost to us from 500 to 1500. Right? So we had this amazing technology, this material. It was versatile, it was durable, it lasts for a long time, it's relatively inexpensive, and somehow that became lost to us. Because I think everybody just relied on it was there before, it's always going to be there, there's always going to be somebody who knows how to do it. But as Serrans, we realize the reason why we are here at the 81st International Convention is because people train the next generation. They formed and they passed on the wisdom that they've accumulated over the years to the next generation, to those who are coming after them. And that's really one of the fundamental tenets of Serra, is to make sure that our Catholic traditions, our values, and most importantly, the sacraments are there for those who are coming after us. So it is a heavy, weighty responsibility that we have as Serrans to ensure the next generation has what we have had, because we can lose very important things very easily if we are not careful. So that's one of the important roles of Serra going forward. And I'm proud to say that events like this convention help to do that, where we come together for inspirational talks, for training, and to share the collective wisdom of the group and pass it on to the next generation. Those who are wearing yellow name tags, take heed. There are Serrans with white name tags who have done this before, who have knowledge that they can share with you. And when we go back, it is everyone in this room's responsibility to share the great things that happen here and to tell everyone that Serra is a magnificent organization with a beautiful and vital mission for the church that must continue if we're going to continue to have a priesthood religious going forward. So I'd just like everyone to share some of that heaviness with me. And if we all do that, it becomes lighter and the lift gets easier because we're all working together. And there's no group that I'd rather be working with than you. So thank you all. God bless.
All right, are there any questions of John?
I make a motion that we accept the executive director's report.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. All in favor, raise your... All opposed, no? Wow, John, everybody accepts you. Thank y'all. Thank you, John, for everything you do every day. So now we're going to have a report, short report from each of our vice presidents. This is something we kind of is new, it's relatively new, but I think it's really good just to give the delegates, who are the most important people at the convention, delegates, to go back, take back to your clubs. You need to know it for sure, at least have heard from the three basic vice presidents, a little bit about what's going on. So we're going to do that. It'll be brief, but it'll be to the point. And the first person is Margot Getty. We'll talk to you about membership.
And guess what I'm going to open with? Serra International Parish Membership Drive. That's one of big initiative. I really don't need to go into it because we already talked about it. But we do want to, just so you know, just to reiterate, we are going to be asking every club throughout the world to run one parish membership drive in one of their churches. And we will announce the winners at the Kansas City Convention next year. We'll be marketing this more throughout the next few months. Another initiative we've taken is there's the green cards. We are on, you have all those already? Or they're still, we need more. Sorry, but I sent everybody an email this morning. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. Okay, surveys. We initiated some surveys on the Club Express. Okay, I keep saying Club. That's Club Express. The surveys are going out to members all over the world. Again, we test drive it on the District 10 in the Houston area. We got a lot of responses back already, so we're tweaking it, the questions, and we'll be getting that out, I'd say, within the next month. You'll all be receiving surveys about your club and what Sarah's doing for you and what they're not doing for you. Around the world, Kurt and I are going to Cologne, Germany. We think we have a 90% chance of opening up a Serra club there. Paris, France, we're working with a nun and her brother to open a Serra club in Paris. That's going to be a hard one, but we're trying. We've also, there's great enthusiasm from people in Cuba. We actually have the bishop's approval to start a Serra club in Cuba. We're just waiting on the telephone call to hop on a plane and go make it happen. Ireland, we've developed a very good rapport with a priest in Ireland that I met in Medjugorje, believe it or not. And he has started doing monthly adoration, he's calling them Serra adoration, holy hours for vocations. And he said he's going to open up a Serra club in either September or October of this year. And we're also establishing a tremendous rapport with the vocations director for the whole of Ireland. You met with him, Candace, when we were there about 6 years ago. And we are going to get the Serra monstrance to him in November. Well, they have their national come and see conference. So we got a lot of things happening there. Dubai, we just got permission from the bishop in Abu Dhabi to start a Serra club in Dubai. So working on that. Working on contacts in Japan. We're working with starting Serra clubs in India in 3 different places. How do you say that? You have to say Goa, sorry. And Mumbai, then Chickleford, which is where Father Desi's from. And today, someone approached me about starting a Serra club from one of the gentlemen, Sarah's from Nigeria, approached me about starting a Serra club in South Africa. So I'm very excited about that. We're working on one with Pat's helping us with opening one in Ghana. Met priest in Beijing, China. Hopefully, I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but we're we have a dialogue going, and we're trying to reinvigorate the Singapore and Taiwan clubs. So we've got our fingers all over the world, and I'm very excited about the outlook for Serra International worldwide. So thank you.
I like to say Margot is the Johnny Appleseed of Serra. So she's planting seeds all over the world. So the next person on our is Manuel Costa, Vice President of Communications. But Emmanuel is not with us, but he has a video that we will show. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Emmanuel Costa, Serra International Vice President for Communications. I'm deeply sorry not to be here in person with you today. Nevertheless, I'm pleased and proud to briefly report on the work of Serra International Communications Committee during the past year. I said proud because the entire team, consisting of Michael Roberts, Joe DeLoy, Jesse Gallegos, and Ann Zdansky of the US Serra, Francisca Law of Hong Kong, Patrick Portelli of Canada, and Robert Seben of Brazil, has served with an admirable dedication and commitment for which we should all be grateful. As you can see, the whole Serra world is represented in the committee, and as you can tell from my accent, I represent Italy. The main result of this year's work was the release of the first issue of the international newsletter Serra Connects, a tangible first step in realizing the vision of connecting all Serrans around the world. As you may have noticed in the first issue, I hope everyone has received a copy, Serra International's leadership and all Serran countries can now report and share their news, their events, as well as examples of useful and successful vocation activities, the so-called best practices. In other words, a two-way flow from individual clubs around the world to Serra International leadership and vice versa. An important feature, I would say an essential one, is that the newsletter will reach all Serrans in their own language, helping them to get to know each other better and strengthen their perception of being part of a larger family, united in pursuit of a common mission. Translation is always a challenge, but no longer a barrier. Today's translation tools are increasingly efficient and easy to use. Of course, human attention and interventions are always necessary to ensure accurate translations and to make sure we are using a common Serran language. In fact, other projects aimed at facilitating international communication are under consideration, all involving improved translation. One is a video project. Think of how many videos of interest to Serra Vocation Mission could be selected, edited, and captioned in different languages and distributed throughout the Serra world. One specific example, the successful Serra Meets initiative offered monthly by the US Serra could be recorded in a video and have a much wider distribution. By the way, including the US. In fact, think of the growing Spanish-speaking communities in the United States. Another one is a magazine project. The Serran magazine is currently distributed only to English-speaking Serrans. We are not proposing a full translation into other languages. It would be too expensive, but there are many interesting articles that could be translated and distributed internationally, and it could work in two ways, since other Serra councils around the world have their own magazine with interesting articles to share. In other words, the idea is to create a kind of cross-fertilization. Finally, I'd like to mention the Serra International website, which has already made a significant progress in offering some of its content in different languages. However, the translation still needs to be improved and expanded so that our website can truly become international. To conclude, this is really the beauty of Serra, a presence in so many countries and regions with different cultures and realities, all united in fulfilling our unique and beautiful mission. Lay Catholics committed to promoting and supporting vocations through prayer and work. And to achieve this goal, communication is indeed one of the essential building blocks. So, always forward, never back. This is a wish and at the same time the commitment that I believe we all share. Thank you for your attention. Ciao a tutti e arrivederci.
So I just want to point out that Emmanuel Costa, you will get a chance to vote for him to be president-elect later today. He's just a beautiful person. He's an Italian who's right now living in Switzerland. He's part of the Italian Serra Council. And he's done a fantastic job on communication. And Serra Connects, you can go to the Serra International website if you haven't already, and it's to be right there. And you can click on the language that you want to read the articles in. So it's a newsletter in 5 or 6 different languages you can pick from, depending on what you're most comfortable with. Okay, next we're going to have the Vice President of Vocations got sick just before he left to come. So I think Maury Rotuisti is going to give his report for him. Maury, that's Bob Rodman is the Vice President from Nashville.
But just pause for a moment to pray for Bob Rodman so that he will recover very shortly. He has a serious dehydration, so that's why he's not here. So again, let's pause for a moment. Lord Jesus, the great healer, touch Rod as you sustain him of your will so that finish the work that you have started on him. Amen. I don't know about you, but my backpack is full of challenge coin. So if you don't have it, I apologize. But the good news is still available at Serra here in the store. So make sure you have those, because the challenge coin is the one that you're going to plant seed to those young men and women that considering possibly becoming future priests and nuns. As we learned today, throughout this week, we Serras are chosen. We are blessed to encounter Christ in all of us. And we are broken, reborn. We learn how to be vocation champion through all these conferences that we attend. And eventually we are sent. We are sent to be an apostle of Christ, focusing on vocations. But foremost, we ought to focus first on our own vocations that God has placed us on. And eventually, as we embrace the call of vocations, vocation champion, vocation apostles, God willing, will all be a Eucharistic missionary. Why is that? Because the essence of vocations we love Holy Eucharist. Because we love Holy Eucharist, we pray for priest. So only natural flow that we reach to the point to be a Eucharistic missionary. And I think that would be my focus, becoming the Vice President of Vocations, is to really focus on the foundation of our calling, the call to holiness. And if you don't have the book of Serra's Call to Holiness, you should get one. You should get two. You should get a dozen, so that you can spread it to the prospective Serra members. I tell you, there are many of them. Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, impromptu.
Y'all might not know, but there's a Father Kyle who has the same last name as Maury does. His son, obviously. So we're real proud of him. He's quite a young man. Okay, our last Vice President is on programs, and that's our Vice President, Tony Mangione from Toronto.
Thank you, Mr. President. You saw already in the Serra around the world, basically the universality of Serra. And we are always challenged for new members. But once we have that new membership, what then? And one thing that I believe you already know is that good programs help with membership, engagement, and retention. The question's being asked, why do we have to pay to pray? And it's also being raised that we are a family. So programs is your tool, your resources to do that. It takes time, it takes planning, and as the saying goes, many hands make light work. So setting up a committee, first and foremost, is extremely helpful. It's nice if you have a theme. This year is the year of Mark. I sent out some information. Year B, and that could be something that we could focus on as far as our speakers are concerned. And when we do have speakers come, we don't necessarily want to corner them with what they are going to speak to, but we can make some suggestions. And it's always to remember to enrich in our faith and go deeper in that second pillar of Serra ministry, and that is to go deeper into our faith of Christianity. If you go onto the Serra website, in particular the serrainternational.org or the serraus.org, and in Canada we make great use of the serraus.org. What's there in regards to program is just unbelievable. It's been built over decades, not just years, but decades. It's extremely robust, detailed guidelines, and I would strongly recommend that you go in there, and as I said, if you haven't already, that much of the work is already being done for us. Again, to reflect back on Serra around the world, you saw some of the programs that are there. From surveys that I've been able to receive up to now, some highlights is that I'm proud to say that all clubs have very strong relationships with their bishops and their vocations directors. And we know that without their support, we wouldn't be able to move forward. And then there are the activities like the priest appreciation dinners for active priests, retired priests. As we heard from Pope Francis when we were in Rome, we are friends of priests. So again, without overwhelming them or suffocating them, if you will, we need to be there on the side and be able to demonstrate to them that we are there for them, not for Serra, for ourselves, but we are there for them. And then being for Serra will automatically happen. When we do the Altar Servers Awards, for example, bishops will come up to me and say, who are you doing this for? Well, it's obviously to plant seeds for vocations. But we do have a sign there that says Serra on the side. So there is some, hopefully they'll pick up on the recognition for the people, the parents that are there. Other things that we've been working on lately that with some good success is that when you ask a speaker, hearing their vocation story is always very, very interesting. But we've also been getting speakers from the diocese to come that work in administrative offices, that work with the priest pensions funds, things that as a Catholic I really didn't know that much about. So listening to some of the lay people and what they had to say from the diocese and finding that very interesting and different. So again, good programs make for great engagement, and as hard as we try to bring in new members, we always have to work on the membership retention too. So please do go onto those websites. I'll continue to communicate with all the council presidents and vice presidents of programs at the different councils over the next year to see what more they are doing, best practices, ideas that we can all share. It is work, but very worthwhile, and I hope you'll agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. I would like for y'all to give all 4 of our vice presidents, they really work hard. I'm so impressed with them. All 4 of them this year have just done, I couldn't have imagined anything better, more dedicated, and really doing the job, So can we give them all a Okay, our next report, next order of business is the treasury report, and the treasurer's doing a good job too. Bob Campbell.
Now it's time to get to the fun stuff. Numbers. So John's going to pull up the audit report. So you have it all in your delegate book. Actually, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the audit, but initially, John, go to that Mullins page. Go further up if you would. Just the first page with their header, right there. So in the second paragraph, this states, in our opinion, the combined financial statements referred to presently or present fairly in all material respects the combined financial position of Serra International and Serra's National Council for the U.S. So that's what you do. That's what you want to accomplish when you get an audit, a clean opinion. So effectively, what we've got here is an audit report. There's not much exciting stuff even for an accountant in this thing. So what I'd like to do, and I can deal with questions later or as we go to get to that period. But John, I'm on page 5. So this is the page 5 is the financial position. Not much excitement there. I think we continue to do well. Page 6, it's our statement of activities. I don't have much. We had, if you look at column 2023, 3 lines up from the bottom is $2,030. So that's the essentially net income for the year. It's a positive versus a year ago, 35,000 negative. The biggest piece of that is that $4 increase that's already played through some of that. Plus, we've had some expense reductions. So the next page, John, is statement of combined functional expenses. This is something I don't even like this report. It's just an audit. So they basically require expenses to be regrouped into, if you read across from left to right, program, general administrative, membership, fundraising. It's just a recast. John, let's just go right toward the back. There are 2 pages at the back and then another. John, I'm going to be on page 19. This is a report. 2 years ago, this would be the second year that we've had a combined report for Serra International and the U.S. Council. We have one office, we share the office. This reduces audit fees, if you will, to have one audit. It's not like it's going to half, but effectively we have a new auditor this year also. Those fees went down almost 40% from the past year. And he's a good to work with, we think, so this first year has worked well. This is a statement of financial position, and what it does then, this is a supplemental page. This is not part of the audit itself, but they put it in there at our request. So this is a statement schedule of the financial position. If you read left to right on your columns, you've got Serra International, the National Council. There are intercompany transactions, which are eliminations, and then the total. So that's the combination of those 2 entities for our balance sheet, if you will, financial position. If you look at the far right column, that $272,718, the cash and equivalents, that will tie to the audit data within. If you go to the bottom, total liabilities and assets, same thing, $525,816 ties to the audit. John, let's go to the next. This is a schedule of activities. A lot more lines on here, but it's the same issue. Serra International left column, Serra's National Council, eliminations, and totals. Those again all tie, the right-hand column ties to the audit. So everything pulls out there. So if you want to look down through some of those, essentially you see convention expense, but we've combined convention and rally, but then it's all on one line. Serra International is $49,810. And coincidentally, Serra's National Council has a $49,801. That's where we're talking about there. And if you wanted to look down convention below, convention and rally meetings under expenses, $81,463, and council, $110,117. So at the bottom there, what are we at here? Oh, that's interesting the way this guy put this together. So that's that breakout, just the 2 entities so that you can see what we're doing. So what I've been asked, and this next page is not part of the supplemental pages. We did not have the auditor look at it necessarily. I didn't want to pay him to do it. But sometimes I'm always asked, what does it cost to run the Chicago office? So we've worked on that probably for the last year and a half that I've been involved in different ways. This report, in my mind, precisely does that. So you see the first 4 columns, Chicago Administrative Office. The total column is right there in front of you. You can see the USAC, Serra Foundation, and Serra International. Those are office expenses only. So the total column, if you take it to the bottom, $471,916 is what the cost is to run that office. There's payroll, right on down the line, convention, rally, and those are all the items that are office related. So how do we get this to tie up to the audit? So Serra International is the next 2 columns, and to get to Serra International's total, you have to then take the costs that are not CAO, office costs, which total to $226,000. And then, so the Serra International is $698,000. The next, in order to get to the audit, though, you have to add in USAC, get eliminations again, and then you look back to the far right column, it'll tie to the audit. That's as fast as I can go through that for you. All I'm really saying is the audit is clean. this data is there for you, for your use. John, we'll do questions later.
We can take questions now.
So if there are any,
If you have any questions, please come to the microphone.
we're going to get to the audit, to the budget next, but if you've got questions here.
Where does the foundation reside?
The foundation has a separate review. It's not an audit, but it's not in these. There are costs that are paid by here, and they're part of some of these costs. As far as where do they fit in this financial? No, this is combined Serra International and Serra U.S. Council. Yeah. So Serra Foundation is a different entity, a different mission, if you will. Mike?
I'm on the foundation, and when I was president, Tom Castellanos, as treasurer, did include the foundation in a joint spreadsheet, but it was actually more confusing than helpful because we take in donations and grants, and it kind of throws things off. Our numbers just don't mesh well with what Mr. Campy is trying to do right here. So, I mean, we do get a formal review, and we approve ours as well, and it's done by accountants and everything's reviewed. But if you start throwing it in here, all of a sudden, we're giving away hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants. What are those expenses, and where does that fit in? And it just became more confusing than helpful, if that's helpful.
And you got $2 million worth of assets there that we don't have in these two more operating units, if you will. One more?
Just a question about from the scheduled activities, the income from the conventions and the expense, conventions, rally, and meetings is about $90,000 in expense greater. Is that because of the meetings that are outside the convention room?
So there's actually a timing issue in terms of when expenses for conventions and rallies come in versus when the events actually happen and when the revenue gets recognized, and that explains some of the differences there.
Yeah, the conventions, since this convention, we had money at December 31, 23, we had money for this convention in our books, but it's not included in our income and expense here at December 31, 23, because it doesn't happen until 24. So what we have in here is the for Serra International is the Chiang Mai International Convention. Make sense? All right, John?
I think past President Mario Biscardi has a comment. If you could come to the microphone, Mario, sorry to make you walk.
So as a follow-up to that question, if you had money in last December, should it not have been accrued for the following year?
It is, and in fact, we should see it here.
Because otherwise it shows that the conventions had lost 91, whereas, well, we should have forwarded or accrued the funds from the previous year to this year. That's my only comment, thanks.
Actually, I probably misstated. Serra International doesn't have income at this point at December 31, but the U.S. Council does income for their rally. So as I put that together, so their rally is in January, so they've got the bulk of their revenue already booked at 12/31/23, and so they cannot, the cash is there, but it's also offset in a lower number in liabilities. It does not flow through operations.
I think what we would be interested in as delegates to know is how much do the conventions actually cost? You know, because you got numbers you say from one year to the other, but I'm guessing that John in some place has got the actual number of what a convention costs.
So the actual cost of a convention is largely contingent on a few factors. Normally, as I mentioned previously at the town hall, the biggest cost of any convention is the food expense. Second is our AV costs. And those numbers vary based on how many people we're projecting to come to a convention. However, when budgeting for conventions, we always try to pick a number that we reasonably expect we'll get this many Serrans, And then we set that so it's a revenue neutral event, so we're neither making or losing money in conventions or rallies.
Location is, where we have it absolutely is key to that. Chiang Mai, we didn't have much for cost at Serra International, because it was primarily paid by the Asian regional.
So just to understand what you just said, fundamentally, you're working on a zero-sum budget.
Yes.
The revenue matches expenses, even though the timing may be off.
That's correct.
That's the intent. All right? Thank you. We're going right into the budget. So the next page up there, John, you've already made it as big as you can. You've all, delegate books, you've all got this. So what you'll see here is 2020 on the far left, and it rolls across. So this is audited 20, 21, 22, 23, a budget for 24, and a projected for 24, and then a budget for 2025, which we need to approve at this meeting. If you look at probably the most interesting numbers on here are, if you look at member dues, first line item, member dues, which included initiation fees for new members, which is the U.S. But the projected number of $429,000 for 2024 versus $399 for 2020. Oops, I'm sorry, $376 for 2023 is effectively, the bulk of it is due to the $4 increase that we put in dues as of 4/24, let's see, that's not right. That was put in for 24. So what you're seeing, the advantage for the budget 2025 is $429,000. If you looked at compared to 376, the bulk of that is all related to the $4 increase. That's essentially the only difference. It's dues. So that's the biggest variety or variance. Beyond that, you can see some convention revenue, and through the course of the years, if you look across that column, you can see some convention expense when you say how much does it cost. It's there.
I believe last year when we talked about that dues increase, it was actually below inflation.
Due to a lot of things.
It was due to a lot of things, but it was less than inflation. And I see that it's flat this year. Inflation is a reality, and even though you have forecasts for expenses, they're going to be impacted by inflation. So if our dues are not keeping track with inflation, how do we expect to sustain, our programs?
You're going to see that the dues, we haven't raised dues forever, so yeah, like to your point, inflation was 14 years, I think, maybe it's something like that since we have raised dues. That's just due to a lot of issues. We have reduced staff, there's all kinds of things that went into that delay, if you will. COVID probably increased the cost. It does increase the cost for our convention, meals and rooms. So, do we need to raise dues? I'm not sure if you're asking that now just to keep up with inflation. What we're saying is no. This comes down to a zero budget, balanced, if you will. And then we look forward. The difficulty we have at Serra International probably for raising dues is it can only be approved at a delegate meeting here once a year. So we need to look forward. And I didn't receive a lot of kickback from dues, but I know it occurs in probably every club across, I know, the U.S. So nobody wants higher dues, and dues is probably one of the biggest issues when you come to membership for some members. But at the end of the day, right now there's no discussion to raise dues.
How do we go about reaching out to corporate members out there that may be willing to contribute to Serra International? Are we working on that?
So the Serra International Foundation is the fundraising grant giving entity, and that's where those requests should come from. That is part of the strategic plan that the foundation is working on. But if you have names, we'd love to get them. So we would need a motion to approve the budget for 2025 as presented. Motion by Margot Getty, second by Pat Manzo. Again, I did a whole presentation on this at 7:30 on Friday morning. We were supposed to do motion, second, discussion. I think we had most of the discussion now, but is there any further discussion on the budget? Mr. President, would you call the question?
All those in favor of the budget, please raise your card. All those opposed, raise your Okay, the last order of business is election of board members for the next 2024-2025 year. And so I call the chairman of the nominating committee, Greg Swites, to the podium.
Thank you, Mr. President. My pleasure to introduce you to the slate of officers that we are offering for the next fiscal year, or excuse me, the next working year. And so I'd like to first of all thank the members of the committee, which include Jerry Haig and Felisa Palmarda and Dan Shoemaker, Joe Sherry and Bob Labatt and Dennis Walsh. May he rest in peace. He passed away this past year. And so we have our presentation today. It's to, as it's presented in the last page, on page 31 of your book. Our president that we recommend that was elected last year as president-elect is Maureen McQueen, and then following her will be Emmanuel Costa, who we've just listened to. He is recommended for and offered as president-elect following Moira's term of office. Vice Presidents Margot Getty, Ann Larkins from Australia, Tony Mangione continues as programs, and Moira Ratamisti to step into the role of Bob Rudman. Secretary Richard Arians, Treasurer Bob Campney, repeat. Past President Kurt Medico now. Trustees, 2-year term. We have 2 new members joining the board: Sylvester Ada from Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, and also Michael Downey, immediate past president of the USA Council. Re-elected, recommended Fred Borges and Roberta Saben from Brazil. Trustees, these are already on the board and they have 1 year remaining of a 2-year term. So, Mr. President, this would be my recommendation for acceptance by the delegates.
All right, so everyone has heard the report of the nominating committee. You've heard the report of the nominating committee. Since there were no additional nominees to the committee's slate of candidates, this election shall be held by voice vote unless there are any objections. Are there any objections to a voice vote for the slate of officers? There are none. All those in favor of the International Nominating Committee's proposed slate, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. Really? The ayes have it, and the slate is elected, and let's congratulate the new board. The past president of Serra,